Good afternoon, everyone. KJ here. We are back for the afternoon session of day 14 in testimony of the Lori Daybell trial. I hope everybody had a good lunch. Old KJ had some frosted mini wheats. I'm trying to steer clear of the things that I normally like to eat, like anything with grease or, butter or salt or any of those wonderful, delicious things. Although I will say that frosted mini wheats are really tasty. So that's what I've had for lunch. I hope everybody's having a good day. Christina Hill, PJ Keith, Becky Slaughter, Zoe Archer, Ron Hensley. Good afternoon, Sarah Schultz, Miss DMC. Remember that to keep the chat nice and community guideline. I love everybody. New thread, we're back from lunch. Voices on the bench and jurors are being brought in. Ricky Wright, y'all, is back on the witness stand, and Blake will continue her questioning. And a lot came out in that testimony, wouldn't y'all say? First, we get hit with this bombshell from this DNA lady, this Coleman lady. I think her name's Keely Coleman. Did the DNA and found Lori's hair matched up to Lori on the duct tape on the outside of what they did to JJ. And so we're now into Ricky Wright. And I guess the question really is, will Melanie P. Pulowski, we call her Melanie P., or it's Melanie Gibb, will she testify this afternoon, or will this be tomorrow? Because I'm telling you, they're bringing her in, y'all. I don't know when, but she's coming in. On October the 16th, y'all, that's 3 days before Tammy is murdered, the device associated with Alex Cox left Lori's apartment and went to the Comfort Inn in Hurricane, Utah. It stopped there for the night, and the next day on October 17th, went to the Las Vegas airport. The next day on October 18th, just 1 day before Tammy's murder, y'all, the device went back to Rexburg. Lori had taken a flight from Las Vegas to Hawaii on October 17th. And many say, KJ, they're not showing any direct links with Lori here. Folks, Alex is taking Lori to the airport. Alex is moving with Lori. Every damn thing that Alex Cox ever did was in the furtherance of his sister's wishes. Conspiracy out the ass, y'all. It's just as clear as any juror could see it. They were never far apart from each other. And Alex Cox did his sister's bidding. So anyway, good afternoon, Roxy and Grammy B and Sharon and Maisie Cavanaugh. She likes diamonds, Mariah Stola, Amica Cream, Bullseye. So, Lori had to set up her alibi, don't you know? Don't you find it kind of coincidental that she's going off to Hawaii? I mean, that woman goes to Hawaii more than anybody I know, but in this case, this is part of her alibi. It's in the legal documents. She was in Hawaii during the time that Tammy was murdered. She couldn't have had anything to do with this. Well, I'll tell you what, as I've said many times, it don't matter if you're all over the damn world. You can conspire with someone else to murder people. Hello, Bumblebee. Rosebud. No more Hawaii vacations now, says Rosebud. It was Meadowcrone. Tammy's death was premeditated. All those deaths were premeditated. It is. I mean, it just is what it is. There's no way somebody just, there you go, I'm going to murder you. No, they were already talking about Tammy having a spirit of Viola in her and all of that. They had to release Tammy, don't y'all know? It's all a pattern, y'all. So Alex takes Lori to the airport on the 17th. He comes back. We now see a map and a chart explaining Alex's device on October 18th. It was at Chick-fil-A in Ammon from 7:58 to 9:32 p.m. A data point is then collected near the Salem LDS Church, near Chad's house, from 10:45 to 11:53 p.m. Now, isn't that just a coincidence, y'all? He's over at a Salem LDS Church out in the parking lot there from 10:45 to 11:53. Let's see, that's 8 minutes. 8 minutes at a church. There becomes a period of time without any data, but the next data point is near U.S. Highway at 11:53 p.m. The device does not go back to Alex's apartment. Rather, it goes to the Hilton Garden in Idaho Falls. Wonder why he didn't go back to his apartment. Why is he going to a hotel? Very interesting, don't you think? The next slide is a map that shows where Alex's device lingered at the Salem LDS Church. The distance between Chad's house and the church is about 2.5 miles. 30 minutes of data points are collected, and then there's 1.5 hours of no data. Yeah, y'all, I'm going to see this thing trial through. Well, it's the Tennessee Orange, don't you know? I'm a big Tennessee fan, whether it's the Tennessee Vols or the Tennessee Titans. Thank you so much, Roxy and Sweet Dreams. We've got people on all different time zones right now. That's a good question, Rosebud. Where was Zaluma during this time, or any of the other cult members for that matter? Okay, Amanda Matters. Speaking of that, you know, you can go on my shorts on the channel here, and I'm up in the Smoky Mountains with Candace and my friend Jenny the evening that we beat Alabama. Do you recall that? Trust me, honey, Alabama's been dominant for years and years and years. And old KJ thought I'd die before Tennessee would beat Alabama again, but I got to see it in my lifetime, and I've got a little short on there where we're celebrating. I'm sure you want to see, you know, old KJ in there laughing her head off about the fact that we beat Alabama. Yes, Mariah Stola. Oh, Amanda, I love you too. You know, in fact, there are a lot of Alabama fans that live in Tennessee. Sometimes I'll go down the road in my car and I'll look and see somebody with a Roll Tide sticker on the back of the vehicle and they've got Tennessee tags. It's a damn blasphemy, for goodness sake. Tennessee Vols all the way. They're going to have a great team this year. Tina says it's just noon here on the West Coast. Now, Ricky Wright says police could not identify anyone else who Alex knew living in the area. And as many of y'all recall, Lori and Alex and the kids moved to Rexburg. They didn't know anybody there. Alex didn't have time to make friends because he was too busy being up Lori's butt the whole time. They were too busy murdering, first of all. So they're making it a point saying there's no other reason why Alex would have been out that way. Ricky Wright points out on a map where data points were collected outside the LDS church building the night Tammy Daybell died. He says, we then don't know where the device is for an hour and 8 minutes. Y'all think an hour and 8 minutes, 2.5 miles away from Chad's, that Alex walk it? Did he turn off his phone in airplane mode and go down there and do the deed for Chad because Chad's too much of a damn wuss? Wimpy, says Rob Wood. Remember, Chad and Tammy were at home alone. The son that lives there was at work. Now, I know Garth is his alibi, but there wasn't nobody else there but Chad and Tammy. Yeah, he could have. He could have drove it. He could have turned his phone off on airplane mode, spent that hour plus going down there. Chad let him through the door. I mean, they got him going through Chad's front door at other times. He could have very well went in there and done that. Ricky Wright identified 3 days, y'all, when Alex's device went into the vicinity of the Daybell residence. On October 9th, which was the day that Tammy was shot at, October 15th, and October 18th. So he was circling around like a damn evil ass vulture, getting ready to do what his sister and Chad wanted him to do. He was getting ready to take Tammy out just as they got him to murder the children. Lori got him to murder Charles Vallow with Chad's blessing. Yeah, Solo Dove, he had to have gotten in late that morning or something because it has been confirmed through testimony that Chad and Tammy were there that evening, that the son was at work. I don't know what time he gets off work, and I don't know where he works. But the bottom line is even if he would have gotten home and Alex came over there, Chad could have gotten Alex in the house without Garth knowing. Now, Lindsay Blake has no further questions, and John Thomas will conduct cross-examination. Denise, Alex was up at that church, and then there's an hour plus minutes where they don't know what happened, so I'm assuming he turned his phone off or something because they have no data at all. It's only 2.5 miles to the house. He could have went in there at Chad's behest and murdered Tammy so that Chad didn't have to be the one to do it. I'm not saying Alex was there. I'm just saying it's a good theory. I mean, Alex was involved in all the other murders. Why not this one? But then again, Chad is charged with first-degree murder. So I'm not really sure what they're trying to say there. Now, John Thomas asked Ricky Wright about his professional and educational background. Ugh. Marvin, I wouldn't let Chad Daybell touch me with a 10-foot pole. That's disgusting to think that he thought he could bless anybody. You know, if this jerk could actually give somebody a blessing and all this, you would think he would have tried to do that to JJ and Tyler instead of helping murder them. But don't you know, Chad didn't want his trophy wife to have children. That's why they went around telling everyone they was either empty nesters or Lori didn't have kids or Tylee died a couple of years beforehand. Lori's wealthy. They both bonded over the loss of their spouses. Give me a break. They bonded over the fact that they thought they got away with murdering them. Ricky Wright retired in August of 2021 as a special agent and is now a consultant doing background investigations for the FBI. Jill Schneider, I don't know. Maybe he felt like if he could go to this hotel, maybe he was paranoid. Maybe he thought, well, somebody might see me coming back to the apartment at this certain time or something. Or maybe he just didn't want to be there because Lori was in Hawaii. If his sister would have been at the apartment complex, I'm sure he would have been back because he was on her like flight of shit. So she's off at Hawaii. He's dropped her off at the airport to go to Hawaii for her alibi. And he goes to a hotel. And who knows? There might have been somebody there waiting on him. A hooker. Could have been Zulema. Could have been anybody. Or he might have just been there just to be there. Maybe he wanted to take some of the money his sister probably gave him for doing all the things he's done for her. And going in there and just staying at a hotel and enjoying himself. Alley Cat, a lot of people say that you can get drugs cheaper in Mexico. Also, that when they go down there to get it, there's not such a paper trail. You can get illicit drugs like GHB, I'm sure. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why he'd go to Mexico. I had a few in the comments say there are people from Arizona that go to Mexico all the time to get cheaper drugs because everything here in the United States is so damn expensive. That's funny. Gherkin drugs. I wouldn't put it past Alex or Chad to have the Viagra thing going on. Of course, you know what my view is, and this might sound pretty sick to y'all, but when it comes to these serial killers, they actually get a Woody taking other people's lives. I wouldn't be surprised if that was some kind of bonus to them. I hope they're all damn... I hope all three of them, Lori, well, Alex, not Alex, but I hope Lori and Chad, I hope they both learn all about things when they get in prison. I won't go no further than that. All right, y'all. Thomas is asking Ricky Wright about his interactions with Ian Pawlowski, y'all. Wright sat in during an interview Ian had with Rexburg Police in December of 2019. And Thomas is asking about it. And y'all know Ian's going to have to take the stand, Melanie Pawlowski. That's right, Bumblebee. Bubba's waiting on Chad. Bubba's been waiting for Chad his entire life sentence. When Chad comes through those dang prison doors and he's introduced to his cell buddy there, it's gonna be lust at first sight. Amanda Metters, Chad's not, I just don't see Chad cutting a deal. Because the only thing the state would be offering is life in prison. And you think he don't want to roll the dice? Of course he will. Trust me, the state tried to sit down with Lori. It's in, you heard Rob Wood and Summer Shiflett when they were talking in that recording that Garrett did, her attorney Garrett did. He said they did not want to take this to trial. They wanted to sit down and talk. But see, Chad and Lori think they can get a really good deal off of the murders of these three people in Idaho. They are serial killers and should be on death row. Thomas asked Wright how long it takes to develop enough data where you can develop a pattern on a person. And Wright says, if I saw something happen every day for a week at a time and place, I would start to think that's a pattern. In this case, I only had those 2 months to look at. When I say pattern, it's based only on that information. And those are crucial months. Absolutely crucial months. Because think about it. They wouldn't be looking more than those 2 months because Lori and Alex moved to Rexburg close to Chad. Or at least, 20 minutes? I drove it. Wayne and I drove it from the apartment complex out to Chad Daybell's when we visited Idaho in January. Ricky Wright says Alex didn't have much of a pattern to his activities, and they varied day to day. Yeah, that's true, Mohawk Mom. There's people that go to Canada as well. And Terry Ward, they're guilty of sin. I guarantee y'all, almost every activity that Alex Cox did was an overt act in the furtherance of what Lori and Chad wanted him to do. The bottom line, the only thing I don't see, when he takes Lori to the airport and he goes to stay at that hotel, it could have been part of the plan that he just didn't want to go back to the apartments for anybody to see him, but that's probably the only thing he ever did for himself in terms of when he was in Idaho. I believe when he is on his honeymoon with Zulema and they're slapping the damn baby oil on and Zulema's telling the police, I think he tried to kill me and all that. The whole purpose of him and Zulema getting married and everything was, again, what? It was Lori and Chad wanting them to get married. So, it is what it is. That's true, Jenny Minnie. Alex could have got him some paid-for friendship there, if you know what I mean. Now, Thomas asked Wright about mapping software he used for the GPS data. Wright says his colleague Nick Balance imported all the data into a Google Earth file, and that's what was shown on the screen today. Janelle Murphy, I think all of them to some degree or another, these cult members, had something to do with selling insurance or whatever. I think Mariah Sistola, that you saying Alex got off easy and everything. I think Lori and Chad were so relieved that he killed himself, and this is just my theory. Or and if you don't believe he killed himself, he just died, right? But I think it was a relief because they were stupid enough to believe that they could put this all off on Alex, not taking into consideration the totality of of actual things that are proven that Chad and Lori were able to do. They were, just as Tina Reddington said, Alex was their puppet. And so those things are well established. So Chad and Lori thought, well, he's dead. We can put this off on him if push comes to shove. But it's not turning out that way, now is it? Does anyone really think that Alex Cox, if he'd have stayed alive, do you think he would have implicated Chad or Lori? No, he wouldn't have. He would have not said anything. You think he'd turn on his sister to save his own skin? No. You're welcome, Molly's mom. Mark McGarry said, could the hotel have been Melanie Gibb? It could have been any of them. It could have been Melanie Pulowski. It could have been Zulema. They were all pretty tight. They were tight with the code words. They visited each other. Phyllis DeLacy says Alex killed himself as a blood atonement for his sins and to quickly move on to his next probation. Well, that's what he thought. And I guess it really comes down to, he might have, I still believe he took an overdose of GHB. It made him feel good when he first took it, and then all that kicked in and he shit all over himself. That's what I think, and died. Lines up to me, but a theory is a theory, y'all. S. Holstein, I think that they would have had to continue murdering people. They probably would have imploded. They would have probably started taking out other cult members because they knew the other cult members knew, to cover their ass, pretty much. That's just an opinion. Yeah, Charlotte Bassett, that's my theory, that Alex killed himself. Just not sure how, GHB, diarrhea, vomiting, seizures, coma, death. And they wouldn't have checked for GHB in a regular toxicology, would they have? And if it didn't show up real heavy or whatever, then they could have said, well, we see GHB, but that could have been naturally occurring. I don't know. I just don't believe that he died the day after Tammy Daybell's body's exhumed. Now, Thomas asked Wright about the phone associated to Alex being at Chad's house on September 23rd. And Thomas says, based on your training, your experience, your knowledge working with the FBI, that's not enough time to dig a hole, dig a grave, chop up roots around the grave, find stones. 17 minutes is not enough time to do all that. And Wright says he was there when JJ was found, and he believes it would have taken a lot of time, more time than 17 minutes. So this defense attorney for Lori is bringing out something that the state should have been bringing out, basically. But this looks again like this is Lori trying to make it look like it's Chad and Alex. Okay? That's another thing, because remember when Archie talked about Tammy? He brought out about this, well, a dead person's not going to move out of the bed, and why didn't they perform CPR? Well, what are they bringing out there? They're bringing out that Chad's full of shit. Now they're saying that this couldn't have been just Alex, because Alex couldn't have done all this. And when we're talking about chopping at the roots, this is JJ's grave. They chopping at the roots around the grave, finding stones, digging a hole, digging a grave. This is what they're telling the jurors. that Alex wasn't the one that dug this grave. It was Chad Daybell. You can't get another explanation besides that. So this makes me think that the defense doesn't have a problem making Chad and Alex look guilty, because their defense is probably going to be that Chad and Alex did this behind Lori's back. Thomas has no further questions, and Blake has some redirect questions. And think about this, y'all. Why wouldn't the state bring up this question about 17 minutes is not enough time to do all the things that were done to JJ's grave? Why wouldn't they do that? And why is the defense attorney the one bringing it out? This does not make sense to me, other than to say the defense is trying to let the jury not look at their client sitting at that table, that she's the one that's guilty, that they're trying to show the jury that it was Chad and Alex. Janelle Murphy says maybe that's why Lori referred to Chad as Alex's friend. It was because they were partners in crime. Well, Janelle Murphy, she sure as hell didn't tell him she's married to him. She'd been married to him for 2 weeks. If Chad has not done anything wrong at the time she's saying this, then why not tell him I'm married to Chad Daybell? Better yet, why is she still over there at the apartment? Why ain't she moved in with Chad Daybell now? She's his wife. I mean, everybody's found out about it. Blake asked for clarification on cell activity and data points. She then says, you were also asked if 17 minutes was enough time to dig that grave. In your opinion, would 17 minutes be enough time for one person to dig that grave? And Wright says it would be hard for one person to dig the grave. Blake asks if it's possible more than one person was involved in digging the grave. And he says yes, and reminds everyone that 17 minutes is the time the device was there and not necessarily the time to dig the grave site. So in my opinion, y'all, she's trying to bring out that there's a possibility that Alex was there helping Chad in that 17 minutes, which I disagree with that. But now I know why she's doing it, because she knows there's enough empirical evidence already established that Alex did everything for Lori. And it's important for Blake to at least leave that in the juror's mind that yes, Alex and Chad could have been the ones doing that. Because anytime Alex is shown to have done anything, and an overt act in the furtherance of anything, they know that Lori would have never, ever not known what Alex Cox was doing at any moment of any time. Alex made sure his sister knew where he was at. He did everything for his sister. He was her protector. Yeah, I understand that, Robin. What I'm saying is, okay, that might answer that question why the defense brought the question up that the state should have brought up, but there's no reason why when they were visiting the whole, remember, they had the stones and the paneling, they could have asked the question then. Or they could ask it, they could develop a foundation with this Ricky Wright. They could develop that foundation if it was important to them to bring it out. But then now you've got Blake. She's not only bringing it up again because the defense brought it up, but now she's saying, hey, jury, there's a possibility that Alex could have been helping Chad. It's a lot harder for one person to do it than two. And that maybe Alex was during that 17 minutes, which, if you think about it, how long does it take you to hand off a body or put it in a hole that's already pre-dug? If you're putting something off in a hole that's pre-dug, right? A few minutes, right? But if you're helping cover it up with the paneling and the rocks, you're helping Chad Daybell. Alex Cox is helping Chad. Then that would fit the 17 minutes. But as far as Alex going on there and Chad not knowing anything about it, and he goes in there and he builds this grave by cutting roots out in the ground, the rocks and paneling and all that, that's not realistic in 17 minutes. Wright says it would be hard for one person to dig the grave. Blake asks if it's possible more than one person was involved. He says yes and reminds everyone that the 17 minutes is the time the device was there and not necessarily the time to dig the grave site. Blake has no further questions. Wright leaves the witness stand and Blake asks for a brief sidebar. White noise is played in the courtroom before standing up. Thomas turned around and gave his daughter, John Thomas's daughter, who is sitting in front of me, a big thumbs up and a wink. "15 of the 18 jurors stand to stretch their legs. Many are chatting with each other. Many in the audience also are standing. These days can be long, sitting for 6 to 7 hours. Right, Amanda Metters. God only knows how long they've had that grave dug. Jill Van Vink or whatever. Yep, I get you on that. Well, Jess, the defense attorney's family members are not witnesses in this trial. They have just as much right as anybody else to be there. That's not a conflict of interest. I mean, if you want to go and see, I don't know if Rob would, if he's got a wife and kids, but I mean, if his wife came, she's not part of the trial. She's not a witness. She's not got anything to do with it. No, Jill Schneider, I'm going strictly off Twitter. Right, I get that, Rowan, to you. Take your daughter to work day, triple murder. Well, he is a defense attorney, and I'm sure he has to defend all kinds of scumbags. All right, some of y'all called it. You ready? You ready? Lindsay Blake calls Dr. Eric Christensen, y'all, to the stand. He's the chief medical examiner for the state of Utah. Here it is, y'all. Here it is. This is where he's going to tell us why he's decided to call it asphyxiation, y'all. Here we go. Here we go, y'all. I knew it. I was like, well, the only other thing it could be was that they didn't want to bring in this Utah medical examiner because they're waiting for Chad's trial or something. But here it is, y'all. Here it goes. Justice for Tammy, says John Coombs. Thank God, says Robin. Yeah, buddy, said Mrs. D. Justice for Tammy, says Rowan to you. Bring it on, says Julie Coe. Oh, y'all. Boom, 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 says Terry Ward. Woo, says Harley 62. Leanne Jordan, yes. Mandy Poe, I'm ready. I sure hope he tells us, says Jody Allen. Young, let's put a bunch of hearts out here for Tammy. Come on, let me see them. Tammy Daybell deserves justice, y'all. Let's see some hearts. I won't see them. I know y'all got a heart. I know y'all got a heart for Tammy Daybell. Let's see them in the comments. There they are. Aren't they beautiful, just like all of you? Oh, y'all were fixing to hear it. How beautiful is that? Just as beautiful as all the people on this channel. Y'all just make my heart overflow. How beautiful is that? Wow. Oh, wow. Isn't that pretty? For Tammy Daybell, y'all. Now, Christensen explains his background in forensic pathology, and y'all, we're going to find out why he says asphyxiation. We're for sure this time. I thought Brenda Dye would bring it out until she talked about this BS about they hadn't changed it on the death certificate in Idaho yet. But now here it goes, y'all. This is why they changed cause of death to asphyxiation and manner of death, homicide. Lori Hussey Daybell better be watching this one. Christensen explains his background in forensic pathology. Christensen performs autopsies and has worked as a forensic pathologist in Virginia and South Carolina before moving to Utah. Again, for those just joining us, Eric Christensen, the chief medical examiner for the state of Utah, who updated Tammy Daybell's cause of death after they exhumed her body. December the 11th of 2019, the day before Alex Cox died. Richard says, is Lori wearing double Pampers for this? Well, I can tell you this. That woman's ass is probably puckering right now. Oh, yeah. She didn't want Tammy around no more so she could have Chad Daybell. She didn't want to be alone, don't you know? She murders her kids. She don't want to be alone. She wants to be happy. She has to move on with her life, don't you know? But the only way for her to do that is to murder her children and to murder Chad's wife, Tammy. And Chad Daybell was right on board with it because he was so whooped. He had to have Lori, his new wife. Blake asked Christensen the process in which autopsies are performed in Utah. Thomas objects and says Utah's procedures don't matter in this case. And Blake responds that Christensen performed an autopsy in this case on Tammy Daybell, and Boyce overrules the objection. So Christensen's fixing to tell us how he performs an autopsy in Utah, and then I hope we'll get to the nitty-gritty. Utah does not have the coroner system. In Idaho, each county has a coroner to investigate the cause of death. medical examiners are used in Utah? So although we know Brenda Dye, the coroner, and the deputy coroner both screwed everybody out of everything there for a while, they did try to make it right by exhuming Tammy Daybell's body, and they left it to a Utah medical examiner because guess what? Chad wanted Tammy buried in Utah, away from Rexburg. Well, this Christensen person has ruled it a homicide. On top of it all, Christensen has performed around 7,200 autopsies in his career. Yeah, J. Blake, it had been months. She was murdered October 19th. So then you go November, let's see, December, almost 2 months. She was in the ground. Good point there, J. Blake. But obviously, they found what they found, and we're going to find out what that is. That's right, Erna Inspich, another backfire, Chad. Cindy says the deputy coroner had to Google something. Give me a break. I get where you're coming from on that, Cindy. Oh, my goodness. When you got someone who's attending a death there who's supposed to be a coroner, and yet they're having to Google something, that's some scary stuff. That's just as scary as John Thomas talking about, well, I've seen it in a Hollywood movie. Hope Grace, the only way that Chad Daybell will take a plea deal is if it's less than life in prison. Because I don't think Chad Daybell's going to take life in prison to take the death penalty off the table. In fact, I think John Pryor's going to fight real hard to get that death penalty taken off the table. And guess what? Try this on for size, y'all. Because the cases are severed and they're fixing to this Thursday give him a court date, he has from the new court date on to a certain point to do what? Mental health defense. Brain damage. Whatever. It starts all over, y'all. It starts all over. Tina Reddington, I think Chad and Lori both were offered life in prison. And they did, and Lori didn't take it. And I don't think Chad would take it because the state did say that they tried to get with them. Well, when I say brain damage, you know, Chad in his near-death experience, he says he hit his head. Y'all remember that, don't you? Some of y'all have talked about that. Now, Christensen performed Tammy Daybell's autopsy. He says his office was contacted in November of 2019 by the Fremont County Sheriff's Office with questions about exhuming a body and having an autopsy done. Christensen was there when Tammy was exhumed and her body was loaded into a vehicle. Here it comes, y'all. He then went to his office and was there when the body arrived. Christensen says it's routine for him or someone in his office to attend an exhumation when they are needed. Yeah, Badger, you're right. It might not give them a trial date, but I guarantee you, they're going to give him a trial date on Thursday. That's my opinion. How many times have I been right? Not many, but that's what I believe. I believe they're going to give him a trial date on Thursday. But I get where you're coming from. That's true. Status conference. Could be about a lot of things. But you know what? They've already got a whole freaking case file on this asshole. Okay? They know where he's been. They know where he is now. The cases were severed. I think they're going to damn say, here you go, asshole. You want your trial date? Here it is. We also need to keep in mind that Chad Daybell has given up his right to a speedy trial, but he has been sitting in jail for so long, even though that was him and his attorney's deal there. The judge is not going to like that. I think they're going to try to get it moved forward very quickly. That's what I think. And it's on Tammy Daybell's birthday. Christensen obtained Tammy's medical records before she was exhumed. Over the course of his career, he says he's been involved in a dozen or two exhumations. They're not uncommon. They're not common, excuse me. So, he's saying they're not common to have exhumation, but he's been there at least a dozen of them. Mohawk Mom, I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not really sure. He would have to bring someone else on board now, wouldn't he? It's a good question. Right, Mother Bear. Chad needs to keep that fat ass chin up because he's next. Terry Ward says, God bless Tammy. Yes, Jay Blake, I heard that. She's talking about, basically, the kids were murdered a couple of months ago. I had to move on with my life and all that. Now, Lindsay Blake asks, if a body is exhumed, does it make it more difficult to do an autopsy? Christensen says most of the time, the deceased person has been embalmed, so it makes their tissues stiffer, but that also helps preserve the organs and tissues, etc. We've talked about this before, Race. Y'all remember whether they could find out if she was poisoned because she had been embalmed? But she's saying it does stiffen the tissues, but it helps preserve the organs and tissues, etc. Preserve, yeah. Paisley Dreams. Maybe my country bumpkin voice ain't doing it for y'all. I don't know. Shell Wordle says GHB stays in the tissue. Christensen says Tammy's casket was dry and the conditions were fairly good when it came time to do the autopsy. Tracy Dale, thank you. I'd love to hear all y'all's accents. Oh, I know, 65. I forgot what the rest of that. Yeah, John Pryor's definitely going to whine and bitch every chance he can get that he can't be ready, that he can't be ready. But Judge Boyce or whoever, it might not be, I think it is Judge Boyce. He is going to be the judge for this one too, because he's been assigned by the Supreme Court for both of the cases. Because it was co-defendants, even though they're severed, that doesn't mean that his responsibility with Chad's is not there. I think he's going to be like, yeah, well, you've been given all the time in the world. Blake asked Christensen to describe how an autopsy is done. He explains that the entire body is checked over. Fluids are taken. Body parts are examined. It's a very thorough exam. Samples are collected during an autopsy to assess under a microscope. Bruises, cuts, and scrapes are also examined under a microscope because they give information about how long the injury had been on the body, Christensen says. And I think this goes back to some of those comments I was talking about earlier where someone said, well, I don't know that Tammy would have been alive if she fell off the bed and hit her head because of the, there not being bruises and stuff. Well, we didn't really get that kind of information at all from Brenda Dye or the deputy coroner. So I guess we all assumed that there wasn't going to be anything. But now we've got the Utah medical examiner that can look and see. Maybe she does have a bruise on her head or not on her head where she hit the ground. And this goes back to bruising doesn't occur after death. So this whole theory that Chad murdered her on the bed and then in order to get guards to come in there, he kind of pushed her off the bed, that's a possibility. Eric Christensen, the Utah medical examiner, says Tammy's cause of death was asphyxia and her manner of death was homicide. Now, that's asphyxiation, but again, this is a short term, asphyxia, asphyxia, or asphyxiation, however you want to put it. And her death was a homicide, and I think we all know how to pronounce the word homicide. We just probably our accents make it sound different, right? Here it goes, y'all. Blake asked Christensen what asphyxia means, and Christensen says it's simply a process by which a person is deprived of oxygen. They're not allowed to take in sufficient oxygen for their life to continue. Y'all remember Mark Daybell in that national interview said, well, just because she died of asphyxia, that doesn't mean that, he was saying that it could just happen where something kept her from getting the oxygen. Trying to make it out to be like her manner of death, the cause of death was asphyxiation, but Mark Daybell's trying to say, well, it don't have to mean nothing nefarious. Well, I hope Chad's kids are listening up now. Now, Christensen says there was no outward visible bruises or injuries that showed she died of those injuries. What injuries? I guess she died of asphyxiation. Christensen said there's no outward visible bruises or injuries that showed she died of another injury or something to that effect. It's how Nate's putting it on there. It's kind of not sounding right to me. So now it's been confirmed, y'all. There were no outward visible bruises or injuries. In other words, there was no marks around her neck. Some of y'all thought she'd been strangled. Injuries, y'all. Injuries include hands around the neck, or if there was any bruising around the nose or mouth where, keeping the hand over the mouth or something like that. We're now being told no outward bruises, no injuries. This goes back to old KJ's theory, y'all. I just believe it. I believe he OD'd her on GHB. She went in the bathroom. She vomited. She got back in bed. I think she started seizing. And he let her damn die. She lapsed into a coma and then died. And she probably choked on her own spittle or whatever, her spit. But listen to this, y'all. Christensen explains there was no indication that Tammy had a history of seizures and her brain was totally normal. So is he leading up to this? If she had no history of seizures, is he fixing to tell us that there's evidence of seizure, y'all? Think about it. She had no history of seizures and her brain was totally normal. We know seizures, like epileptic seizures and stuff, are very dangerous. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what he's going to say. I just know he's brought up seizures. And we just got to talking about the symptoms of GHB overdose. Seizures is one of them. Vomiting is one of them. So we'll find out. I don't recall Chad saying that Tammy Daybell had a seizure. I recall Chad Daybell saying he woke up and she was dead. She slipped peacefully through the night. She had a smile on her face. That's what I remember. And then during the testimony, he never said she was having a seizure. He said she went to the bathroom to vomit. Well, are you hearing that? Are you talking about the ME that's on right now? Because Nate hasn't updated anything further than Christensen explains there's no indication that Tammy had a history of seizures and her brain was totally normal. Oh, okay. Now Paisley dreams. Okay. I forgot about that. So much to remember, y'all. Thanks for reminding me. But I still think if she had a seizure, and I'm not talking about seizures in the past either, I think it was GHB. That's just my theory, my hypothesis. I'm sticking to it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm waiting, y'all. Hey, Ashley Shannon. There are a number of ways people can be asphyxiated with suffocation, neck compression, anything that impairs someone's ability to breathe normally, says Christensen. When someone stops breathing, they lose consciousness, but their heart can continue to beat for a time. Christensen says they looked at pesticides and other potential drugs. There was nothing in her system that played a role in her death. So all this 2 years, y'all, when we were hypothesizing that perhaps she'd been poisoned, is he talking about GHB too? Man. But then again, I told y'all, unless this Utah medical examiner came out and said something different, that was my theory. But I still think something's up here. I just do. Y'all, there were bruises on Tammy's arms that happened in the hours around the type of her death, Christensen says. They are consistent with someone being restrained and would be consistent with asphyxia being cause of death as well. So Tammy was being restrained, y'all. She had some bruises on her arms. There it is, y'all. She's being restrained. Let me repeat it again. There were bruises on Tammy's arms that happened in the hours around the type of this type of her death. They are consistent with someone being restrained and would be consistent with asphyxia being cause of death as well. Jill Schneider says held her down and smothered her. One of y'all even said they could have put a bag over her head. How is that going to be determined? Put a bag over her head and made it tight on her while they restrained her? It is a two-person job, I think, Olive Heatley. Blake asked Christensen about seizures and whether he has conducted autopsies of people with seizure issues. He says yes. There are often tongue injuries and bowel or bladder issues, and Tammy didn't have any of those. Christensen says it would be uncommon for a 49-year-old woman like Tammy to start developing seizures. Can y'all believe this? Again, they're rolling out the seizure, which obviously y'all remember me Saturday saying she could have had a seizure from being overdosed on GHB. I thought it was a good theory anyway. But now you got this medical examiner who's rolling it out, saying when he's done autopsies of people with seizure issues, he says there's often tongue injuries and bowel or bladder issues, and Tammy had none of those. Sarah Ann says Chad held her down and Alex suffocated her. That's as good a guess as it's going to get. That's right, Paisley Dream. Garth and the rest of them really need to look at that. Are they really going to look at this testimony of a medical examiner who's got all of this experience, done all these autopsies, done at least a dozen exhumations, and Chad's children? Do you think that now that they might have a little bit of compassion for their own mother and tell their dad to go straight to hell? Nothing in Tammy's medical records shows she had seizure or heart issues, Christensen says. Chad Daybell's kids, guess what? Your mother, in her medical records, shows she had no seizure or heart issues. And Chad Daybell, you heard him. You heard your daddy on the phone telling Melanie Gibb her heart was failing her. She was just in such bad health. Give me a break. Give me a break. So Chad Daybell's kids needs to know that their mother did not have a seizure, and she didn't have any heart issues when she died. And if they want to take up for their damn nasty-ass serial killer father, that's on them. That's on them. That's right, Olive. Tammy was healthy as a horse. Hello there, Jail Bell. Yes, Terry Ward. Tammy was in good health. I imagine Alex and Chad both. Y'all know how it shifts. My theory, my hypothesis shifts as we learn things. And I did say, y'all, that theory on Saturday, I said, unless the Utah medical examiner says otherwise. Well, what I'm finding out in this testimony is they did not find anything in her system. If they could find it in JJ's body after, 8 months of being in the ground? And Tammy Daybell had only been in the ground 2 months? And they're not saying anything about GHB? That's what I get out of it. And I also get out of it that this was not a one-person job. This has had to be 2 people. You can't hold somebody... Well, I guess it's possible you could hold somebody down and smother them, maybe however you're doing it. Christensen says testing was done for intoxicants. And Blake asks if this means poisons, and he says yes. They tested for hundreds of intoxicants, illicit drugs, and over-the-counter medications, along with insecticides, cyanide, heavy metals, phosphate poisonings, nerve agents, and none of these were found. Some of y'all have said that these freaky ass people had found something that could be undetected, that, you know what I'm saying, that could be undetected, or these people wouldn't know to check for. That's still a possibility, but it's highly unlikely when you think of the bruising on the arms as being held down. If they poisoned her, then they wouldn't have had to do that. She was fully awake, y'all. We did a lot of testing in this case that we normally, in this case, than we normally do. And everything came back negative except the medication she was prescribed, Christensen says, adding that it's one of the most extensive autopsies he's been involved in. So there you go, y'all. She was prescribed medications. Could they have overdosed her on her own prescription medication? Because if they found it in her system, they would have said, well, we found medication that she was prescribed in her system, but it was in very high doses. They would have said that. So they're not saying that. Also adding, this was extremely extensive in their testing. This was out of the, they wanted to find out. The optimal substance to test is blood. Because Tammy had been embalmed, liver samples were sent for tests. Christensen looks directly at the jury while explaining all this. Christensen says there was not a toxicological explanation for her death. So she wasn't poisoned, y'all. And one of y'all did bring this up earlier about the liver as well. Then how can he say homicide, says dodging bullets? Because they're saying that she was held down and asphyxiated. There's many different ways to do that, as some have pointed out on here. They could have put a pillow over her face. They could have took a plastic bag and just, you know how you've seen it in some of the movies? I know, I'm sounding like John Thomas, but really, they put that bag on there and tighten it, and they're holding her down and she can't get free. Sounds like to me it would have been plastic, don't y'all think? Jay Blake, she would have screamed. Well, number one, we don't know when Garth got back. But number two, they could have stuck, one of y'all said a while back, that one little towel, the hand towel or whatever, they could have stuck something in her mouth, a sock or anything, and then stuck a bag over her mouth. There are numerous ways that a person can be asphyxiated. Voice announcers were taking an afternoon break until 2:30. So it is 2:11 now. So about a 20-minute break here. I think he sat on her chest, says Amber Weatherly. Somebody says the mask. He had a hole in his veil. Yeah, I know, McJet. Garth was at work that night. Yeah, y'all are pointing out that, yes, this could have been a one-man show, y'all. But really, what the hell was Alex doing down the street? And for a little over an hour, there was no data at all on his phone, no movement, nothing. What is he doing down the street, y'all? What's he doing? Kelly Fitzgerald thinks that Chad had Garth lie. Dodging Bullet says, I think it was only Chad. Well, Chad's the only one charged with first-degree murder of Tammy. Lori's not. I guess Alex would be included in that. Vix Tex thinks that Alex and Chad did it together. Yeah, I think that a lot of y'all believe that Chad and Alex. But the ones on here that are just thinking it's just Chad and giving really good reasons why you think that could have been, theory-wise, you know, nobody on here is wrong as far as all that's concerned. It could have been just Chad, or it could have been Chad and Alex. The bottom line is Chad Daybell is charged with first-degree murder of his wife. So whether he did it by himself or whether Alex was there makes no difference at this point. course, we do want to know as much as we can know, but the bottom line is Chad Daybell's a son of a bitch who they need to take his ass to prison. He is going to murder his wife so he can have some other hooker. He should have divorced her. He should have ran off with Lori. Whatever. Or Chad Daybell, he's been telling everyone for years that his wife's going to die young. Couldn't he have just waited until she died and had his hooker over here, meeting up with her in hotels until Tammy died? If that, in fact, is what's going to happen, he can see beyond the veil, don't you know? If he saw that, then maybe he should have just said, Lori, Tammy's going to die at a young age. We've got to stay cool because I've been told I can't. It'll mess with my atonement or whatever if I divorce her. So, Lori, let's just stay patient. We'll still see each other. I'll still get to roll down those damn yoga pants and stick it to you on my tiny little gherkin. No, they sped it up because you know what? They didn't get the money from Charles. She murdered the kids. They didn't get no money from Brandon. And now it's Chad's turn. Chad's got to complete it because most everyone else that was murdered was Lori's deal. So now it's your turn, Chad. And Lori's, this whole bullshit that Lori is sending him a text message at one point saying, go be with your family. I want you to. I don't want to get in the way of things. Maybe down the road if things are different. Give me a break. Give me a break. These people, they're disgusting. I really believe that. Who has said that? Trurella Gangs or whatever. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. I honestly don't believe Chad Daybell had it in him to actually murder his wife in terms of doing it. I think he wanted her dead. I think he helped Alex after the children were murdered. He could have very well been involved in the murder of those children at the time. All I'm saying is why change the MO if Alex has murdered Charles? He went to try to murder Brandon Boudreaux, but that didn't work out. He did murder the kids. I believe it. I believe Alex Cox murdered those kids for Lori and Chad. So if they've had him do all this, why change it? It'd be different if we didn't have the evidence that Alex was right up the street and that there's an hour plus time where there's no movement, nothing on the phone or anything like that. Yeah, KCL, petechiae, torn, there's things in the mouth. Also that whatever that, I can't say it. The hyoid bone, what is that, y'all? I don't know how, somebody tell me what that is again. It's the something bone in the neck. The hyoid, I don't know. The hyoid bone. There you go. Thank you. KCL, MM, all the rest of you. Kelly, I'm in Tennessee. Well, I can't say it right, y'all. I can't say it right, okay? So please, just cut me some slack, will you? Will y'all just cut me some slack because I can't damn pronounce things properly sometimes? Hyoid, dog mom says. Okay, did I say it right that time? I can't say it. It's like when the Y comes out, I can't go back to the O because of my southern accent. So, I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all deserve so much better than that, but damn. Okay, good. I'm glad y'all know what I mean. But there are some people that don't know, and I'm just trying to do what I can. There are so many unanswered questions about all this. They're still taking a break. The last thing talked about was there was no toxicological explanation for her dad, says Christensen. So, Rays, we got to reevaluate. The ones that said she was probably poisoned, and I even said last Saturday, probably GHB. Now we're being told that she looks like she'd been held down, y'all. And yes, it could have just been Chad. Or it could have been Chad and Alex. I just can't get out of my mind where Alex told Zulema, after everything that I've done for them, they won't talk to me after Chad and Lori took off to Hawaii. Why would Chad have to murder his wife by himself when Alex is just right up the street? Mom on the case says Chad laid on her with a pillow, but this goes back to her arms. Her arms were being restrained. How that was happening? Was it on the insides of the arms? Was he holding her back like this? Did he have her? Was he sitting on top of her, holding her arms down? Was Alex holding, or was Chad holding her arms down? And then, all it takes is a plastic bag. All it takes is something shoved into the mouth or into the nose. Right, Beach Lady. They didn't find any bruising on her neck where she was strangled. They haven't said anything about that bone in the neck. They haven't said anything. They did say that there was no damage from a seizure, like, the tongue and all that. So that would spill over also into any damage in the mouth where they might have shoved something in there to keep her from screaming or whatever. So we're talking about they didn't do anything to her to incapacitate her before asphyxiating her. From what I'm getting, she was held down, and then somehow, which we've all got different options here, her oxygen was not she was not able to get oxygen. She was being held down. That's an important point, Kelly Fitzgerald. They had to be careful because this could affect him getting his life insurance. Yeah, we gotta add that component in there. The pink foam and stuff coming out of her mouth. It was still coming out of her mouth, I thought, when she was dead. So that leans to me that it could have been a plastic bag or something. It didn't have to be tied around her neck, y'all. All they had to do was take the plastic and lay it across her face as she's being restrained and holding it tight. And it's not going to make marks on the face. It's not going to do anything like that. Amica Cream says, bag for JJ, bag for Tammy. They perfected it, don't you think? They found no injuries on her whole body other than those bruises on her arms that restrained her. That this professional says shows somebody restrained her arms, held her arms down. But no other injuries. Yeah, it is, Bordeaux lady. It's hard to trace suffocation method. That has been well established, Karen Holland. She was super healthy. Someone said in one of the comments that I read earlier, they're a little bit around the age of Tammy, and if they did what she did, they would be calling the ER. I'll tell you this right now. If I went into Zumba today and took the whole class, I'd probably pass out. Terry Ward says the pillow is what killed her. Person of interest, when you get tased with something, it leaves a mark. And so they're saying they don't see anything but bruises from restraining her arms. There's no other injuries. But I understand that y'all are throwing her, just trying to figure out what this could have all been about. And by the way, if she had been, say for instance, let's just for sake of argument, she had been tased, then why restrain her? If that was meant to incapacitate her. Just Samantha says, that's what I think, just an old-fashioned suffocation with the pillow. KCL says suffocation with a pillow. By laying on top of the pillow and grabbing her arms. That's interesting. Kelly says that maybe her leg was twisted in the blanket because, the sheet as a way to restrain her. Tasing leaves a burn and it hurts, says Tina Reddington. Because Tina Reddington knows all about that, don't you, Tina? You probably tased yourself just to see how it felt. Huh? Oh, I don't mean to laugh, but Tina Reddington is very, very interesting. Yeah, me too, Marcella McNeil. I'm praying I can hear guilty as charged from the jury. Whatever that circle was finally worked, I guess, says Kim Top. Candace Parr thinks she was suffocated by a hand towel. But let's just remember this, y'all. Remember the testimony of the pooling of her blood in her body, in her torso area. Right, old lady Snoop. Wonder if John Thomas will get up there and say, so, Eric Christensen, have you found any pillow fibers up the nose? Because I asked you earlier whether there was plastic fibers up JJ's nose. What a dumbass, right? Tina Marie. Okay, let's look at that. Was the vomiting in the bathroom? Was that just made up to make it look like, well, all this stuff was going on right before she died? I'm going to tell you, which it really wasn't, but he made it up just to make it be like she was really sick. She went to bed with a cough. Before she got into bed, she vomited, or did this really happen? I don't think, now that they're saying that she was restrained, and asphyxiated, what? She's going to go and vomit in the toilet and Chad's got a plan to restrain her after she comes back in from vomiting? I don't think so. Or Chad and Alex has got a plan to get together that night and hold her down and asphyxiate her, but it just so happened the same night she's vomiting? And then you tie that into the toxicology stuff that they did. They didn't do just the regular panel. They did one of the most major toxicology things that he'd ever been part of, along with the autopsy itself, other aspects of it. Largest one he's ever, in terms of in-depth looking and stuff. Doesn't seem real, does it, y'all, that Tammy did vomit? Because then you would have to say that she vomited that night And Alex and Chad got together and restrained her after she was sick. And, you know, that don't add up. That don't add up. Lainey says, I think she was passed out unconscious on the bed after taking GHB. Well, they did a really thorough toxicology report on her. It was, what was said, it was, they tested for hundreds of things, intoxicants, illicit drugs, over-the-counter medications, insecticides, cyanide, heavy metals, phosphate positions, nerve agents. He says we did a lot more testing in this case that we normally would. We did more than we normally would, and everything came back negative except the medication she was prescribed. And they didn't say that they found elevated levels of that. And then they did the toxicology. The liver samples were sent for testing. There was not any toxicological explanation for her death. So although I really thought what I did, I got to look at this and say one of two things. Chad Daybell did this, held her down, asphyxiate her with a plastic bag or a pillow, which would be kind of hard unless you, I mean, when you got bruising on the arms, it seems like you'd have to use your hands. So how are you going to, I mean, I don't know how you do that, but I'm sure it's possible. I think, y'all, theory-wise, this was a two-man team. That's what I think. That's what I think. That's true, person of interest. There could be some kind of drug that they just didn't know to check for. But I'm going to tell you, when they're saying illicit drug, they're talking about the date rape drug GHB. So they would have checked for that. And think about it like this. They did a autopsy on JJ after they exhumed Tammy, because they found JJ in June of 2020, but they were looking at Tammy at the end. At the end of the 2019, December 11th. They probably took some of the things that they had learned about Tammy and looked at it. I mean, because really, folks, when you've got JJ and Tammy's cause of death is asphyxiation, and yes, we understand why they said that about JJ with the plastic bags and duct tape, but still, to me, it's not coincidence that they smothered these two victims. We are still in a afternoon break. That was 22 minutes ago. It is currently 2:33 p.m. in Boise, Idaho. Excuse me a second. Cindy, they couldn't test her blood, so they took liver samples. I think there might be some medical people here that could explain why they would do that. I mean, obviously she didn't have the blood because of the embalmment. that they were able to get into the liver. Well, if you think about it, it's a lot harder to detect asphyxiation, don't you think, than it would be if they shot Tammy with a gun like Alex was gonna do. I wonder how they were gonna play that one out. That out of nowhere, someone just shoots at Tammy on October 9th. He's going back to the gun range around the 14th, 15th, 16th. That was the plan still. How are they going to explain Tammy Daybell getting shot and killed without looking to Chad Daybell saying that damn asshole hired somebody to take out his wife for her life insurance? So they had to come up with something. Now Boyce is back on the bench and jurors are being brought back in. And I got to let my cat out. Hold on. So Boyce is back on the bench, y'all. And the jurors are being brought back in. We're going to learn some more, maybe. We've learned there's bruises on the arm indicating that Tammy Daybell was restrained. They haven't really told us the options. I guess that's left in the jurors' hands. They did try to rule out that this could have been seizures. Are we going to hear something? They don't say anything about bruises around the neck. They just said on the arms. Moonchild, John Pryor was in court today. He came in, said something, whispered something to John Thomas and left. I don't know if he's back, though. Miss Mountain Shasta, you can go on Nate Eaton's Twitter feed. That's what we're doing. And then later on this evening, the audio will come out of today's testimony. Nate Eaton never said anything about any of Chad's children being there, or even any of Tammy's family, really. Today, they haven't said, he hasn't said. Illegally Blonde says, poor Tammy, I can't wait to see Lolo the Hussy in General Pop. They're bringing in new names, y'all, to the jurors' ears of Melanie Pulowski and Ian Pulowski. Yes, they are currently talking to this Utah medical examiner who ruled Tammy's cause of death, asphyxiation, and manner of death, homicide, which is super important for the jurors to hear this. And some would say, well, KJ, even so, is there anything at all being said about Lori's involvement in any of this? Folks, it's been showed out ever since day one. Text messages. She's constantly in contact with Chad. She's in contact with Alex. Alex is in contact with Chad. Alex is in contact with Lori. Alex is taking Lori to the airport. Alex is moving his stuff in Lori's garage. Alex and Chad and Lori at one time or another at the storage unit. Y'all, it's showing conspiracy to commit murder through and through. Arwen Hardy, I think that, let's just say, for instance, Lori says she had a $2 million life insurance policy on her, and she gets convicted of all this, and the premiums have been paid all this time. Still in effect, don't you know? Well, I'll tell you what. An insurance company can drop you for whatever the hell they want to drop you for. And I hope they drop that damn bitch. Excuse my French, folks. They need to drop her. And then her family, when she comes out in a pine box, whenever that may be, when she's life in prison, they can figure it out from there. Maybe, just maybe, her family will say, let's do this quickly, because Lori wouldn't have wanted a fuss. Doesn't that echo what Chad said about his wife, Tammy? Lindsay Blake asks if Tammy's organs appeared normal, and Christensen says for the most part, yes, but there was fluid in the lungs and a frothy, dry foam in her airways. Blake asked to show a photo to the courtroom. It's a close-up of Tammy's face that shows the pink foam coming out of her mouth. Okay, folks. All right, we're fixing to get some more explanation on this. So we're fixing to find out what this pink foam coming out of her mouth and why she had fluid in her lungs and a frothy, dry foam in her airways. Pulmonary edema, says Dog Bomb. If she would have died from pulmonary edema, wouldn't that be the cause of death and not asphyxiation? Or is that like the byproduct of that? The pink foam is a manifestation of pulmonary edema. Okay, somebody's watching. Christensen says, he has conducted other autopsies where this foam has been present. Pulmonary edema is a physical manifestation of an underlying process. Christensen says, we most commonly see this kind of setting in opioid intoxication and can be seen in drownings, heart failure, any number of things that can cause pulmonary edema. Lenore Gray, Ian Pulowski is the husband of Lori's niece, Melanie Pulowski. Melanie Pulowski was in this inner circle, the Malachite woman. So we know that they say we most commonly see this pink foam in these situations. Opioid intoxication. Well, they've ruled that out through toxicology. We've seen it in drownings. Well, we know Tammy wasn't in a swimming pool, so you can rule that out. Heart failure. Well, you know, Chad told Melanie Gibb her heart was failing her. Any number of things can cause pulmonary edema. Whatever caused the pulmonary edema would be the cause of death, Christensen explains. He says this played a part in him determining asphyxia was the cause of death. He says whatever caused the pulmonary edema would be the cause of death. So whatever did it, whatever caused the pink foam, whatever made that happen, and he says it's asphyxia. So I guess what that's saying is is pulmonary edema couldn't be, all right, you died of pulmonary edema. No, pulmonary edema is something that happens. Well, okay, whatever the cause of death was, that makes the pulmonary edema. It's like a byproduct of the reason that somebody dies. If that makes sense. That's how I'm reading it. Byproduct. That's right, Amy Hart. Lindsay Blake gives Christensen a paper to mark where he located the bruises on Tammy's body. Boyce asks what he is using to mark the sheet, and Christensen responds that it's a blue pen. Dog Mom is letting us all know that from suffocation, pulmonary edema happens. So whenever I've heard pulmonary edema before, because I'm ignorant about medical stuff, I thought, is that a cause of death? No, the cause of death causes the pulmonary edema, the pink foam. So we're about to, well, thank you. This is Tennessee colors. We're about to find out where the bruises on Tammy's body are located. I know he said earlier it was on her arms. Is there any other that he saw bruising? Liza Joe, if she wouldn't have been embalmed, they could have possibly gotten blood samples instead of having to go into the liver and do it that way. And KCL says, it appears Tammy's heart was healthy. So if Tammy's heart was healthy, then what's this bullshit about heart failure? Her heart's been failing her. Give me a break. Oh, yeah, her heart's failing her all right as she's clog dancing and doing high energy aerobics. Christensen has finished marking the exhibit, and Blake asked the diagrams be shown to the court. You can't take blood from an embalmed body. Am I correct? I mean, embalmment includes draining the blood out, right? So, and replacing it with chemicals. So, that's why there was no blood taken from Tammy. She had been embalmed. Karen Holland, I think you're on the right track on that. How is it that they get activity on Alex's phone at the LDS, Salem LDS church there in the parking lot, and then an hour and so many minutes goes by with nothing at all? No activity at all. And then the next thing you know, he's on highway so-and-so, heading away. So we're waiting to find out where, let's see. Jay Hughes, what Lindsay Blake has done is she's given, I'm assuming it's like a picture of a body and telling him to mark with a pen. And now they want to show that to the jury and the court. I hope that answers your question. Hi, T Lemon. Teresa K says that Tammy had bruising on her chest, which would line up to some of y'all on here that's saying that Chad was straddling her. But I haven't seen this yet on Nate Eaton. So some of y'all are watching whatever you're watching from the courtroom. Linda Z, he left his phone at the church. He could have left the phone in a bush in the vehicle and walked on down there. For all we know, he could have left the phone and drove down there. Better yet, for all we know, Lori could have been on the scene, leaving. Well, no, she was in Hawaii. That's right. And I'm thinking about Tylee. That's what I'm thinking of. I mean, you think of any explanation why Alex Cox was up the street, 2.5 miles away. What? He's up there for what? Lori's in Hawaii. What's he waiting on? What, he's waiting for Chad to murder his wife and then Chad will meet him afterwards? To say, oh, well, no, Chad had to get the scene ready for Garth. If in fact Garth wasn't involved, I don't really believe that. I mean, that's just my theory. I don't believe any of his kids were involved in the murder of their mother. I just don't believe that. I mean, I believe a lot of shit, y'all, from Chad, Lori, and Alex, but not, I just don't. Okay, now here it is, y'all. Christensen marked 3 blue dots representing bruises on Tammy's upper right arm, a blue dot on the lower right arm, a mark on the chest above her left breast, and a blue dot on the left arm over the bicep. So somebody was either laying across her there, because I was thinking it was like 2 hands on her arms. But now this is starting to look different. Now, on the diagram of the back, there are bruises on the back of the right upper arm, on the back of them, and one on the lower part of the arm, on the back, and on the back of the left arm. What I'm going to do, y'all, when I get off here today is I'm going to go on here. You can Google up an image of just an outline of a body, and I'm going to try to see what I can come up with on that. Let me just repeat this so y'all know. Tammy's upper right arm. Are they meaning the forearm? Are they meaning the upper right arm? A blue dot on the lower right arm. A mark on the chest above her left breast, and a blue dot on the left arm over the bicep. Lindsay Blake now wants to show close-up photos of the bruises found on Tammy's body. J. Blake, of course, when they talk about the front of her arms, the back of her arms, you'd have to know whether she was sleeping on her stomach or whether she's laying on her back, whether she was on her side. So it seems when you're thinking of the front of the arms on both sides plus above the left breast, it would seem to me that she'd be laying on her back. And somehow the hand went around the back end there like the hand holding her down. It is breathing bones. It is horrifying. But we're here to get justice through understanding. And you know what? Tammy is not, she's gone. And so are the kids. They're, in my opinion, they're all in heaven. That's what I want to believe. So the way that I try to deal with this is to say, because we're talking about this, about these injuries, along with what we've had to talk about with Tylee and JJ, to me, these are their bodies, their earthly bodies, telling everyone as evidence what was done to them. It's them, in a lot of ways, speaking from the grave through these injuries. So we want their voice heard. We want to know what these evil, diabolical people did so that they can go down. Not only go down and get convicted and life in prison, but perhaps even hell itself. Nita says that Chad and Alex did it together. And I wouldn't be surprised, y'all. And guess what? Do you think it's even crossed a juror's mind that it just so happened, y'all, that Tammy died while Lori was in Hawaii? Y'all, the bottom line is any juror can see she's trying to set her up her alibi. It just so happened. It just so happened, don't you know? She, what was it? Lori was in Missouri, was it? On the 9th? Thinking that was going to go through. Everything was going to be good then. She was out of town on both times. The first time that Tammy was, they attempted murder on her, and now that they've succeeded, she's not in town again. Or could the jurors say, well, I don't believe in coincidences, but she's not there. Is there any text messages where Lori's saying, kill Tammy, kill Tammy? No, but there sure is a lot of talk about Chad Daybell talking to Lori about when the percentages start to add up and I see the differences, then things will go quickly. Give me a break. What does Lori think is going to happen? I mean, her kids are murdered anyway. You know what? Amari Cohen, the first death penalty thing would be lethal injection, and if they can't get a hold of that drug, it'll be firing squad. So they are down somewhere. I mean, Blake is asking to show close-up photos of bruises on Tammy's body. Whether they're showing that to the gallery, I don't know, because there hasn't been anything else in the last 5 minutes. Squeaky Wheel said Alex could have simply turned his phone off and driven to Chad's house. They were tracking his phone with pings. Phone turned off, no ping. It's sad, y'all. It is absolutely sad that we are just now being shown through the state's case that Tammy was somehow, some way, she was held down. The pulmonary edema, which is, i.e. the pink foam, is from what they did, I don't know that they can say, well, we've determined that it could have been a plastic bag. I don't think they can just speculate. She wasn't strangled. They're not bringing anything out about petechiae hemorrhaging. Now, the first photo shows Tammy's left upper chest with a bruise. We are not shown the image in the courtroom, but Christensen describes it. The next picture shows a closer view of the bruise. We see this image. It is black and dark blue. The following photo will not be shown, but it's her upper arm with bruises on her right bicep. The following photo is a close-up of the bruise, and we see the picture. We now see an image of Tammy's right forearm with bruises on it. And does somebody want to tell me why Brenda died, the coroner and the deputy coroner didn't check that shit out? I mean, so much just absolute negligence on all of this. So there was an image of Tammy's right forearm. The bottom part of your arm is the forearm. We now see an image of Tammy's right forearm with bruises on it. So it's not a bruise. It says bruises. And it's also showing her upper arm with bruises on her right bicep. Something was laying on her arm, but at the same time, I'm thinking of the bruise here on her chest above her left breast. Then there's over on the left arm. Something's holding her down. And it can't be just one person, y'all. I mean, it would be different if someone wants to say, well, KJ, maybe Chad got on top of her and took his knees and put them down on her arms. Well, are we talking that would cause more than one bruise? I would say more than one bruise on the forearms means a hand. Something holding her down. The next picture is the front side of Tammy's right forearm with a bruise. Other photos show more bruising on Tammy's arms. So many of y'all in the stream are saying that he could have taken his knees and put them on her arms, which would also, I mean, if he's straddling her, I don't know how you get a mark on your up above your left breast, though. The right knee could have been on the left of her chest. But there were bruises on both arms, y'all. I'm going to have to think about this. But y'all are probably right. Y'all have schooled me more than I could count. Christensen says it's more than likely the bruises were on Tammy's body before she died, because once circulation stops, it's much harder to cause a hemorrhage. So this couldn't be, caused when she fell out of the bed. We know Chad and Garth didn't try to save her with CPR. The EMTs didn't say anything about what they had done that would cause something like that. And she's supposed to be already cold and stiff. Somebody is saying in the chat that they've heard that there's someone in the courtroom that says that it looks like handprints. Kathy Hull says sounds like she was struggling. You know, wasp wart. You're not going to believe this. But, well, maybe you will. Maybe many people would believe it. But Wayne and I got in the bed the other night to go to bed. And it was after the Saturday night live stream. And I wasn't really thinking nothing of it. But for a minute there, he was laying in bed. And I thought, wait a minute, let's see. You know, because I knew he sleeps on his side away. And I usually sleep, you know, kind of spooning him a little, and then I'll turn over to my other side, and we sleep that way. It's just the way we are. And I got to thinking of the mechanics of that, and I actually thought, wouldn't that be an idea to get my husband roped in, you know, us being fully clothed and everything, getting in a bed and seeing how that would work. I know that sounds silly to y'all, but I actually thought about that. That's really interesting. Well, Kathy Barella, Kathy Benya, excuse me. Maybe they did see it, but you know, it was natural causes, so they might have not known the whole situation and didn't really say anything. Christensen says the injuries on Tammy's body occurred around the time of her death, y'all. So these bruises happened around the time of her death, which we pretty well knew that. But to hear this medical examiner say this, also to say she died of asphyxiation, that she wasn't poisoned or anything. There was no marks around her neck for strangulation. I don't know if we're going to, I'm not shooting no vid doing it. I just want to figure it out myself, you know. Just get my husband, you know, to help me out on that. Also, I am going to print off like one of those pictures of a human body, and then I'm going to take a pen and I'm going to try to go back and I'm going to look at that. Because you got to wonder whether someone was on top of her, whether they were laying over her, whether there was someone there holding her down while the other person asphyxiated her. And really, the bottom line is this. If she had died, as Chad Daybell says, of just her heart was bad and she went to bed with a cough, what the hell? What the hell are the bruises doing there then? Huh? What the hell are the bruises doing there? If there's an innocent explanation, natural causes, what are we talking about here? The bruises are damning, y'all. More photos are shown of the bruising on Tammy's body. Some of the photos are shown to the entire courtroom, others are not. And Christensen explains the injuries. Again, these are injuries. And if anyone wants to believe Chad's bullshit story that she died in the middle of the night, whether she fell out of bed or what, that wouldn't cause those type of injuries on both arms, above her breast. What does falling out of bed? Y'all know where I'm going with this. The injuries make it even more damning. Yes, many of us would have loved for this medical examiner to say she had a broken bone in her throat and she had bruising around her neck. That's what we thought we would hear, or perhaps would hear. Or we even thought we might hear that she was going to be poisoned. But the bottom line is there is no way to explain that type of bruising on both arms and above the left breast there and behind the arms on the other sides of them. I'll tell y'all one thing. As they're sitting here talking about bruises all over Tammy's arms and all of that stuff and on her chest and stuff, I guarantee you when Chad Daybell goes to prison, he's going to know what bruising's all about. He's going to know what getting injuries and bruises is all about. Bubba's going to teach him a thing or two, don't you know? Bubba's going to bruise him up real good, getting him all broke in, don't you know? You got to wonder what Chad's kids are even thinking about this, if they're even following it. Oh, because trust me, if they don't want to listen to any of this, they're definitely going to hear it in Chad's trial. And I hope John Pryor has packed away plenty of whiskey for his flask. Because shit's going to get real with Chad Daybell real quick. That son of a bitch took his wife out of all those years, who bore his children for him, worked her ass off and did everything she could to be a good wife. And this is how he does her? What are we saying here? Chad's daughter Emma says that her dad was framed by Chad and Lori. Well, how's she going to prove that with the murder of her mother? What, Alex just slipped in? Maybe Chad was so fast asleep that he didn't know Alex had done this? Give me a break. Those kids are basically brainwashed into believing that the state is just after their dad for whatever reason, that it really was natural causes, but the state's just picking on their dad. The bottom line is there is no excuse for those injuries on Tammy. Christensen noticed signs of lividity. This is when blood pools at the lowest point of a person's body following their death. Over time, the lividity becomes fixed and the blood will no longer be movable. Christensen says on Tammy's body, there was fixed lividity on her back. So this whole stupid story of Chad's, that she fell out of bed and right in that moment of falling out of bed, she died. No, I don't think so. Blake asked Christensen, is lividity permits him to determine a cause of death, and he says no. And then Blake asks, what about rigor mortis? And this is a stiffening of the joints and muscles a few hours after death. And there have been people on here that said after 2 hours, rigor mortis sets in. Some said up to 8 hours. I talked to Candace, who is a registered nurse. She said within a few hours. She didn't give specific number. She just said a few hours. Blake asked Christensen if a time of death can be determined off rigor mortis. He says it can be looked at and helps, but the longer a person has been dead, the wider the time of death estimates would be. Well, I'll tell you what, y'all. Y'all want to know my opinion of Tammy Daybell's time of death? It was in that hour plus time that Alex's phone wasn't active. It was during that time that Tammy was murdered, and Chad let her lay in bed or whatever, dead, until Garth got home, because Garth wasn't there that evening. He was at work until he come home, and we don't know when he come home. And if he testifies, maybe he'll tell us. But then that was when Chad was like, okay, Garth's home. Let me give it a little bit, and then I'll say, Garth, come quick. I can't believe it. Tammy's dead. I've been telling everybody she's going to die for years and years and years. I'm shell-shocked, Garth. What do we do? I'm pointing at pictures on the wall saying she can't be dead. He wanted her dead. He wanted her dead so he could stick that nasty ass shit into that damn whore. That's what. John Shepard says Chad Daybell's kids could be just as crazy as he is, but I'm going to tell y'all right now, I look at those Daybell children as victims. I mean, their mother is murdered, and their father did it with the help of Alex, in my opinion. I don't believe the kids had any part in it. And if any of y'all think otherwise, that's your theories. I'm cool with that. Y'all know what it is when we're talking justice through understanding. The longer a person has been dead, the wider the time of death estimates would be. So, if Chad is telling these people she fell off the bed at this time and everything, and they're there that morning, it shouldn't have been that long. Make no mistake, if they can conceal her time of death, Chad and Alex and Lori, because really, they're the conspirators. They're the ones that wanted Tammy dead. Then that would have been something. Christensen was not present the day Tammy died and says he relies on external information to help determine when a person dies. Christensen says, based on what Chad said about Tammy being cold and stiff at 6 a.m., it's likely she died a couple of hours earlier. And I'm going to have to agree to disagree. Because, again, I know what time Alex was up there at the church, and I believe within that hour-ish frame there. I mean, this is just my theory. I guarantee you she was murdered before Garth got home. So I think that's something I need to know and flesh out if, in fact, we'll ever find that out in testimony. if Garth says he got home, whatever time he got home. Because, again, Chad and Tammy were home alone, and Garth was at work. We just don't know what shift he was on. We don't know where he was working. Christensen says he looked at other causes of death and did not find them to be likely in Tammy's death. He again stresses the cause of death was asphyxiation and the manner of death was homicide. Blake has no further questions for the medical examiner. So not only was he trying to figure out her cause of death, he was looking at other things that could have, just from what he had known about what Chad had said and what the Brenda Dye and her deputy coroner said. He was looking at all her medical records, everything that it could have possibly been, and he looked toward that. And he would say, well, here's her medical records. These are the medications she's on. What could have happened? He starts to look and say, well, let me troubleshoot. Let me look here. Let me look there. Folks, there's no way getting around the injuries, the bruising to the arms, the chest. That does not line up with Chad Daybell's bullshit story. Pure and simple. It doesn't. If she's already dead, if Garth's coming in the room and she's cold and stiff and she's already dead, and Garth says him and his dad picked her up and put her back in the bed, that wouldn't have been bruising there because she was already dead. Okay? So that's something I can look at. The monitors will now be arranged to the jury. Attorneys and judge can see the graphic images of Tammy's bruises. The audience will not be able to see them. Even if you wanted to believe Chad Daybell when he says that he woke up around 6 a.m. and she was dead, she was half on and half off the bed. He calls Garth. Garth comes in, says she's cold and stiff. Chad and Garth says she's, to the 911 people, she's cold, she's stiff. They put her back on the bed. There's no way that she received those bruises from them putting her back on the bed. I know I just said that a minute ago, but I have to repeat it. Because I'm trying to think of how in the world she could have gotten these injuries other than murder. Being restrained. That's a good question, Dodging Bullets. I don't think we've got the answer, but Tammy, what was Tammy wearing? Work clothes or pajamas or what? Oh yeah, Terry Ward. Chad was there. He murdered her with the help of Alex, in my opinion. But if you don't believe that, you can believe this. Chad Daybell murdered his wife of all those years so that he could have a hooker, a loose woman. That's what he did it. And for the money. Yeah, I mean, Tammy busting her ass Monday through Friday as a librarian ain't bringing home the bacon for old Chatty boy. He's got to have more than that, don't you know? Blake shows the images as Christensen describes them. And guess what? Lori's not looking at the monitor that shows the bruises. Why wouldn't she? Why wouldn't she want to look at her competition who's been murdered? She's not looking at the monitor to see Tammy's bruises? Well, you know that's an act, don't you know? She wants the jurors to see her not looking. The bottom line is she knew exactly. She knew Lori. Lori knew it. She knew Lori. She knew exactly what happened. You think she didn't ask Alex what happened? You would have to believe that Chad has been saying all this time that his wife is going to die at a young age. And he's also telling Lori, Viola, and it's getting close and all this and that. I guess he had to prove to Lori that he was the man, that this was going to happen. Maybe Chad played it off in role playing with Lori, saying, really, Lori, I didn't know that she was going to die. For real, y'all, no matter how you look at it, Lori, Chad, Alex. It's just as simple as that. She went to Hawaii when she was murdered, and she went to Missouri on the 9th when she thought that Alex was going to murder Tammy. She didn't want to be anywhere near it. Just as she's also saying, I was in my apartment when the kids were murdered in my brother's apartment. Get for real, y'all. Get for real. She cannot get away with the fact that she was the mother of these children. The mother of these children. She cannot talk her way out of it. That's right, Pamela McCartney. That's right. Bella, Italia, these funeral homes, they might think, well, we don't know what was done before this body came to us. Maybe the EMTs, anything could have, anything and everything. And it's not that, like, these funeral home people, maybe they do know that bruising doesn't happen after you're dead or something. And maybe they do know that. But, I think these funeral homes, when you're bringing a body there and you've got the chief coroner and the deputy coroner saying it was natural causes, for all the funeral home knew, maybe they thought, well, maybe she did that a few days before or the day before, earlier in the day, something happened. They're not going to question that. Honestly, y'all, these funeral homes just want to get paid. They don't want to get in the middle of all that. Okay, so the photos have all been shown to the jury. Blake has nothing further. The defense attorneys will cross-examine starting tomorrow. So it is 3:27. They're fixing to be done for the day. Please, any of y'all that have anything that y'all really want to share, put it on the rewatch of these live streams. I'm not asking you to watch them again. I'm just asking you to put it in because a lot of stuff on here I'm sure I wanted to hear that you felt was important that I didn't get to. So I love you all. I'll see y'all in the morning. We've got a lot to digest. I'm fixing to print off a little picture of a body, and I'm going to start putting in the marks. I'm going to start thinking about this. I love you all. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you in the morning, and keep on looking.